Hello everyone, I'm Mick Sass and I'm one of the inspectors with RVIA. Today we are going to discuss the issues involved with the installation of wet location junction boxes. The National Electric Code, the NEC, under paragraph 551.40b, requires the use of listed equipment and that they be installed within the terms of their individual listings. This includes junction boxes. The listing requirements include many items such as the proper fittings being used and the number of conductors and devices that can be housed within. In this standards training video, we are specifically covering wet location junction boxes, or what we commonly call J-boxes. Wet location junction boxes are often used in slide-out room installations, or, as we can see in this photo, as an electrical connection point for a generator. This video will address the application requirements for proper installation of wet location junction boxes. A wet location J-box allows for electrical connections in areas subject to the outdoor environment, or in an area where water could potentially be found. In this photograph, a wet location J-box is installed in an area where little, if any, water should be found, as it will be covered by a skirt with a rubber seal that protects the 12-volt electric motor. Although this is not a wet area, it could be considered a damp area. Wet location junction boxes are intended for use in both damp and wet areas of an RV. So the use of a wet location J-box is still a good choice. I mentioned generator connections using a wet location junction box in the first slide. Here we show a fundamental difference in what is considered a wet location. In the photo on the left, you see that the wet location J-box used and mounted to a frame member is in an area where road spray will certainly be present in wet road conditions. So this installation location would require the use of a wet location junction box. In the photo on the right, we see a standard non-watertight 4x4 junction box that is tucked away at the very top of a generator compartment. Even though the compartment has an open bottom and exposed to the elements, a wet location J-box would not be required here. A wet location J-box is acceptable at this location, but it is not required. The standard 4x4 J-box seen in the last slide would not be acceptable in any area where rain or road spray is possible. Wet location junction boxes must be used in all areas on the exterior of the RV. This slide shows another wet location J-box mounted on the frame of the RV. Here we see a typical watertight J-box with a blank cover that supports both a watertight conduit that is entering on the right side and an SJ cable entering from the left side of the box. Note that both the conduit and the SJ cord are connected with compression fittings. Hand tightening these compression fittings is almost impossible by hand. The use of a proper size wrench will be necessary to tighten the fitting and create the watertight seal. Also, with any watertight J-box, assure that the cover gasket is properly aligned with the box and with the screw holes so that a watertight seal is achieved. In these two photographs, you can see a couple out of the many different watertight fittings available. Both of these employ a compression seal that requires proper tightening of the nuts onto either the SJ cord or a watertight conduit. Generally, watertight fittings are designed for a specific brand of junction box. For example, if the brand being used is a square D, both the box and the fittings will need to be square D. So again, we encourage you to read all installation instructions for any and all listed components being installed in your RV, while also assuring that the mating components are compatible. There are both metallic and non-metallic plastic of some kind watertight junction boxes available on the market today. The box on the left is a plastic box and will not require grounding as it cannot conduct electricity. The J-box on the right, however, is a painted aluminum and will need to be grounded as it can and will conduct electricity if a short were to develop. Grounding of the metallic junction boxes is necessary and must be done in the proper manner. A minimum of a 2/3 loop in a clockwise direction is required by the NEC. Also remember that the ground wire cannot overlap on itself. The photo on the left clearly shows that the ground wire is installed in the clockwise direction, but only about halfway around the ground screw. In addition, and according to the NEC, only listed green ground screws can be used to make this connection to the J-box as seen in this photo. These are green anodized machine screws and are to be installed in the hole specifically designed for the ground screw. The photo on the right shows a good 2/3 wrap around the screw. The only problem is there are two deviations in the grounding requirements here. First, the ground wire is connected to the securement screw holding the J-box to the RV. And secondly, it's not a ground screw. A ground screw would be green and it's easily identified that way. I also need to mention that all electrical components covered by the NEC and installed in RVs cannot be altered from its listed configuration. The listing installation instructions detail all requirements to install any electrical component, including wet location junction boxes. Any deviation away from the J-box's listing or installation instructions is prohibited. So here in the photograph on the left, not only is the 2/3 loop done incorrectly, there have been two holes drilled through the J-box in locations they are not intended. The dimples circled here are the locations intended for holes to be drilled to secure the junction box to the RV. Again, reading of the installation instructions will provide guidance for the proper drilling locations. In the photo at the right, and take a close look at where the red arrow is pointing, a large hole was made by drilling several small holes, then punching out the larger opening. This is a major alteration of a listed component and it is not acceptable. Anyway, making this hole makes no sense. There is a pre-existing manufacturer-provided opening right beside it. If a structural member or other factors make it impossible to use the opening provided, altering the J-box is not the answer. So in this situation, the Romex is now routed through a hole that needs additional protection due to the very sharp edges created by making the new opening. Please remember that any alterations made to a listed component is not acceptable. It may void the warranties and render the component unsafe. Finally, even simple alterations as seen here by using the wrong screw to attach the cover plate on a wet location J-box is not acceptable. In this photo on the left, a sheet metal screw is seen on the left side of the J-box cover and a wood screw on the right side, and neither should be used as replacements for the machine screws that should secure the cover. The photo on the right shows a watertight J-box that will obviously not be watertight if the cover is not flush with the junction box top edge. Thus, the use of ground clips on a watertight J-box is not acceptable even if the watertight J-box were to be used on the interior of an RV. The reason for this is that the listing requirements dictate installation requirements, including those concerning grounding. Wet location J-boxes use ground screws, not ground clips as seen here, which would compromise the J-box's water tightness. So, again, we encourage you to read all the installation instructions for your specific watertight junction boxes and for any and all listed electrical components being installed in your RV. Thanks for watching this RVIA Standards training video on wet location junction box installation. Please view all our other RVIA training videos available here on our RVIA Standards YouTube station.